Alright, so this is a suggestion via Patreon. The name of the video is the U.S. Navy ready for the Red Sea threat? Bro, we better be ready for the Red Sea threat, or any threat that comes against us, based off of the budget that we have for the military. So, I would hope so, but let's go and check this video out, guys. We better be ready.
In the Red Sea, the U.S. Navy has defended against wave after wave of drone and missile attacks targeting vessels vital to the world economy.
What we are witnessing in the Red Sea is an extraordinary challenge to freedom of navigation and global trade.
It remains to be seen if airstrikes by the U.S. and allies will put an end to these Houthi attacks. The variety and cost of these weapons by the Houthi rebels shows a great change in warfare. Precision weapons, once the province of major powers, have become much cheaper and easier to produce. Iran has led this revolution, exporting these weapons to groups that range from the Houthis to Hezbollah and even to the Russian military for use against Ukraine.
So it's quite an important spot to be able to have free flow of navigation, particularly for flows of energy back and forth between the Middle East and Europe, and then goods from China to Europe and vice versa.
The U.S. Navy has long had a virtual shield that protected its major warships. The missiles that are the cornerstone to this defensive effort are not cheap.
But when you start to look at the cost-benefit analysis, and you have to do that over time, these become expensive, options. You're talking about shooting down drones that cost $20,000 with a standard missile that's a little over $2 million.
They are not easy to produce in large numbers compared to the Iranian arsenal.
Then maybe they shouldn't cost $2 million.
Or when looking at the Indo-Pacific, the Chinese rocket force.
Yeah, there is a very real industrial base limitation the United States has to face.
Is the U.S. Navy surface fleet prepared for future threats?
I think in terms of the Red Sea, and referring to like the Houthis specifically, we're referring to like a small like rebel group in the middle of the desert. I do think, at the very least, if we cannot handle that small threat, then we have an issue, a big issue, guys. Let's go.
At the dawn of the missile age, the U.S. Navy realized it would need a new way to defend against these high-speed aerial threats. The Aegis weapon system consisted of missile-armed cruisers that could use their advanced sensors to detect and take out threats with defensive missiles. And aerial coverage by aircraft like the F-14 Tomcat, supported by the E-2 Hawkeye, would also engage targets far from the task force.
It was a cat and mouse game that happened in the Cold War. The Soviet Union had these reconnaissance strike complexes where they were trying to locate U.S. Navy battle groups in the open North Atlantic to be able to send long-range bombers out to hunt for them, backfire bombers and Badgers, backfires that are still in service with the Russian Air Force at this point.
The next iteration, the Aegis combat system, took shape in the late 80s. The keystone of
this man was like, we're innovating and they're still using tech from the 80s. That's basically what he just said under his breath, guys.
This was the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer.
That class has been around since 1989, and of course they've modernized it, but the threat's going to evolve, and as it evolves, the requirements are going to evolve. As of right now, continuing to build that class, that will eventually be replaced by a DDG-X, which is several years in the future and will probably look quite a bit like the current class, only more sophisticated.
As the Ticonderoga cruisers have started to retire, Arleigh Burke destroyers have become the go-to solution for sending U.S. power around the globe, capable of defending themselves and others against high-tech threats, and also capable of attacking targets in the land, air, and sea domains. In the Red Sea, Arleigh Burkes have become visible weapons against a war on the global economy. But the U.S. Navy may be over.
Listen, guys, if it's a kerfuffle, let's say, on the entire global economy, the other people that are kind of being protected here should also be having some skin in the game, guys, all right? It shouldn't just be us out there exclusively, taking on the Houthis specifically. I do think that all the other allies that are also being protected here should probably do something. Just a thought.
Overworked.
At the end of the Cold War, the analysis said we needed 600 ships if we wanted to maintain sea control against the Soviet fleet in the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Mediterranean. There was still a trade-off there because we basically said we couldn't do the Persian Gulf. That would require more ships. Then that threat went away, and the size of the surface fleet has been gradually reducing down to about, since 2001, 2002, it's been anywhere between 280 and 300 ships.
Is the U.S. Navy too small? No.
Since the Houthi attacks on vessels in the Red Sea began, nearly $105 billion in ocean freight has been forced to use more expensive routes to deliver their cargo.
Right, like a lot of them are, instead of going through the, let's say the canal, they're choosing to go around Africa completely.
The economic repercussions of a closed Bab al-Mandab Strait are straining the world's vast shipping industry.
The Red Sea is a fairly choke-pointed area. Everybody knows who passes through the Suez Canal and when. In some cases, you can see ships from shore.
The Houthis have been attacking ships with fast boats, uncrewed ships, drones, cruise missiles, and even ballistic missiles.
You don't start World War III over this, but you impose some consequences. You have a strategy that includes both defensive and offensive elements. You try to build the broadest multilateral coalition as possible. You try to encourage partners to contribute to less.
Encourage partners to contribute. Start there.
Lessen the security burden on the United States, because we have a whole bunch of things going on around the world, and we have finite resources and a Navy that's not large enough.
But is the U.S. Navy in a...
No. Listen. Our U.S. Navy is large enough for us. It is, in fact, large enough for us. You need to get the other people who are being protected to do a little bit more, bro. That's it.
Quality versus quantity fight?
We have a significant problem with ammunition resupply, which we should have learned extremely well from the experience in Ukraine. In Ukraine, the Ukrainians used up ammunition much more quickly than we expected, and they ended up putting pressure on stockpiles.
All right.
The U.S. Navy continues to invest in new ships and new missiles, and energy weapons will also possibly change the cost paradigm with aerial engagements.
Energy weapons? Really?
And there were jokes in the past that, where in Star Trek they say the Klingon bird of prey can't shoot unless it decloaks or something.
Right. Well played.
You'd have to turn off all the power on your ship in order to fire your directed energy weapon.
Right.
But we're navigating some of those technological changes, and now you see lasers deployed aboard destroyers as a close-in weapon system of sorts.
Bro, how would that even work? I'm guessing two separate, battery banks, most likely. Maybe even like a capacitor that basically fills up every time it's discharged. I just can't even think about how that works. Maybe that is how they work. Because if they're saying that it's like the Klingon bird of prey, right? Then by all definitions, they would have to have two separate sources that are powering.
So a very interesting time and some real potential for improvements on at least the warship side in terms of engagements.
And in the short term, the Constellation-class frigate will give the Navy more anti-air capability on a proven platform.
Some people like the idea of a revolutionary military affair. Some people don't. Where I come down is that, things are constantly changing, and technology is constantly changing the way that we fight and the way we defend ourselves and the way we attack our adversaries. And it certainly seems that we're in a moment of significant and relatively rapid change.
Advances in short-range air defense should bring down the cost per interceptor.
The Navy has thought seriously about how it will deal with air threats, and significant and large numbers of air threats, which would include ballistic missiles. And the other part is, it's a world war. Anything that happened would likely spread to other regions, and I think that's one of the things that the Red Sea sort of demonstrates to us is we never know where the maritime threat might come up, and we have to make sure we have sufficient force structure to meet that. That is going to be the real challenge of the next decade.
All right, guys, I'm going to tell you where I am right now, mentally at least, with this. I do think, specifically, there are ships that are being bothered, let's say, while going through the Suez Canal. A lot of these ships are deciding to no longer go through this canal and just go completely around the bottom tip of Africa, guys, right? Is it costing more money? Absolutely. Is it safer? Completely, because all you really have to worry about down there is what? Somalia? I mean, I'm not trying to minimize that. That's also equally crazy. But if we talk purely about who has the firepower, I would rather mess with the Somalians, bro, than the people of Yemen. I'm just gonna be honest. If I had a choice, right? But we just need to get them to basically slow down, bro. All right, they need to slow their roll, guys. But all right, listen. I do think that we have enough to protect us in terms of the U.S. Navy, right? Like, are we ready? I think so. For us, we are. For the allies, not so much, right? Either they're going to have to put more money into the pot, or they're going to have to start coming out there with their own ships also, right? That's where I am. But all right, listen, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly.